Welcome to the HUNNID YARD DASH football podcast presented by the Chiefs Focus Network, where you talks about the NFL from end zone to end zone and all HUNNID yards in between. Without further ado, here's you.
What it do? This is the 100-Yard Dash football podcast presented by Chiefs Focus. And I don't know what I'm doing, but hey, we're going to keep moving forward. I'm on here with Mo Horton, a.k.a. Audience of One. What's going on, bro?
What's going on with you, brother? How you doing? Yes, sir. I can hear you.
All right. I don't know what's going on with my camera, but we're going to keep it moving, bro. We're going to keep it moving.
Yes, sir.
It fell off his platform. Now I don't know why it's not working, but it's all good. We're going to keep it moving. So this is the season 2 premiere, really. You know, life happens. Life happens all the time, and sometimes you can't predict what will happen from day to day. I meant to have shows much before this. Like, I meant to have shows much after this. Last time myself and you talked, we were like right before the Super Bowl and everything. And then that happened. And believe me, I understand the feeling. So I'm not
stings, bro. Still stings.
I'm not here to rub it in. I ain't here to do all that. You my partner and all that.
But no, it's good, man. I'm under the belief, man, when you win a Super Bowl, you got the right to talk about whatever you talk about. You won, so to the victor goes the spoil. So it's gonna always be a soft spot as a fan because you got a lot invested in the team. Go to the games, you spend money on the merchandise. You obviously spend hours of being watching them and watching coverage of them. So it's definitely something that stings. I know it's something that and I got and I have a mutual respect for the Chiefs, obviously. What we talked about in the last podcast with the coaches and everything. And obviously I have friends that are Chiefs fans, but I've never watched Super Bowl 39 again. I'll definitely not ever watch that game again. I can replay all the plays in my head. So, but I do congratulate all the Chiefs fans and you, of course, for the Super Bowl victory. It was a great game.
I ain't gonna lie. I probably will never rewatch that Super Bowl against the Chiefs against the Bucks. I promise you, I'd never.
Yeah,
I doubt if I ever do. So I understand. I get it completely. But forget about all that, man. We ain't here to talk about that. Right before we get started,
This episode is brought to you by Manscaped. Use the code ChiefsFocus to get 20% off of your order. Manscaped. Your balls will thank you.
All right, this is brought to you by Manscaped, so we're going to keep it moving. Look, one of the reasons I was planning on bringing you on anyway, you already know how it goes. But, but it just felt, for in between the Super Bowl and now, I've had a lot going on in my family or whatever. So I haven't been able to get season 2 out until now, which we're, a week before the draft? Is it a week and a day? What's today?
A week and a day, yes.
Yeah, I barely know what time it is. But we're a week and a day away from the draft, and I meant to start the season 2 long time ago, but it just never materialized. But here we are, and I saw that Jalen Hurts gets a massive deal. He gets a massive extension to his bank account / portfolio / all of that. So I put up the number. I had the numbers here, but if you know them off the top of your head, you can go ahead and say
yes,
them.
it's 5 years, $255 million, 179.03 guaranteed, with a 110 million at signing.
My Lord, it's a snapping turtle.
Man.
I'm super happy for him because I'm gonna be honest with you. 2 years ago when they played the Buccaneers, I never thought I'd see the level of play jump in that 1 year that he did it. Like I saw maturity this season. I did see gamesmanship this season. He's always been one of those interesting brothers who knows how to stay cool under pressure. But I saw even just game planning, him being with Sirianni, which I'm surprised he worked out to be as good of a coach he ended up being, as quick as he ended up being it. But it's well deserved. It's absolutely well deserved. I didn't think he'd get his extension done this soon. I thought it would be after Burrows, to be honest with you. But what were your thoughts when you heard the deal?
Well, yeah, I knew that they was going to get the extension done just simply for the fact that he wasn't going into this year making $4 million, not after the season that he just had. Like, no agent in their right mind will let them do that. And that's kind of it'll be a segue for something that we'll talk about later on. But absolutely, like most quarterbacks, when they get up to that last year, they wanted to renegotiate their deal before they play that last year. They don't want to go into that last year risking injury or the possibility of regressing on that. So we knew that it would get done. Shouts out to Nicole Lynn, who is now the president of Clutch Sports, first Black female woman agent to negotiate a deal this massive for a quarterback. And then she's setting the precedent. She got Quentin Williams, who's going to get a deal with the Jets here soon. And she just signed a lot of rookies, including B. John Robinson, who's going to get drafted pretty good in the draft. So, they did a great job. I knew that it would get done because I think despite everything that happened in the 2021 season, I think the Howie and Nick saw pretty early that Jalen was going to be the guy. They just needed to put the pieces around him to fully show them, because we talk about football all the time, and the margins are very thin. You have some quarterbacks who have a high ceiling but a low floor. You have some quarterbacks who can raise the floor on their teams, and I think Jalen was one of those guys. He just needed to get consistency because this was second year in Nick's system. He had been in 7 different systems before Nick, got there, so that helped a lot. Also, getting the talent around him, which they got, getting a rapport with guys. So I knew the deal was going to get done. Howie and specifically the owner, Jeffrey Lurie, are very, very good at taking care of their guys, specifically the quarterback. They did it with McNabb. Vic, at one point in time, was the only quarterback to sign 2 $100 million deals, one with the Falcons and then one with the Eagles. You saw what they did with Carson Wentz, even though it didn't work out, but they took care of him going into before his 5th-year option, and now Jalen. So I think that the deal was a very, very good deal. I think it was good for both parties involved. It makes Jalen, it puts Jalen in a respectable realm with the other top quarterbacks, so that he's getting paid, but also it's a team-friendly deal to where the next 4 years of the contract, including this year, which would have been his last year of his rookie deal, will give the team cap space to sign guys like Devontae Smith coming up next. A.J. Brown, his contract ends. Reddick, Josh Sweat, and anybody else that can come up before the big number hits. And when those big numbers do hit, the last 2 years of this deal, Jalen will be up, to get another bite of the apple, so he can restructure and extend again and can get more cap space and get more money, before he even hits 30. So I think it was a great deal for both parties involved.
Man, I'm very interested in the fact that that they were able to get this deal done before the time ran out or whatever on his contract. And like you said, just as much as it is when you're doing these deals, is just as much about the timing of when you do it, just because I know it means a lot to these players as far as being the highest paid, some of them being the highest paid, some of them having the most guaranteed money. Some, the timing matters just as much as the amount, and seeing Jalen get this money after, mind you, getting all those players that he got, how he got up there last season. Can't think of the kid's name. The wide receiver,
AJ Brown.
AJ Brown. Getting AJ Brown and being able to secure him. I think they already extended Dallas Goedert.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just being able to secure the weapons around him for a little bit of time, but also taking care of him before his contract hits the end. That means a lot to me. That told me all I needed to know. And me and you talked a long time ago. And I don't really talk on the phone, but I accidentally called you. I accidentally called you that one time I was getting off of work, and then you called me back, and then we talked for a little bit. And we talked about how the differences between Howie's philosophy on Jalen Hurts versus
Doug Peterson.
Doug Peterson's philosophy. While they both thought he was a good quarterback, the philosophy was a little bit different. And sometimes that's all it takes to ruin a quarterback's career, is just the fact that two people think differently of them. While they think the ceiling is a lot better than what it actually was at the time, but him being a running quarterback and him being a throwing quarterback could have really derailed his career. He could do them both, don't get me wrong, but the health. We look at Lamar Jackson, who is a former MVP, and we'll talk about his contract and all that, but just seeing how that happened, and then they ended up getting rid of Doug Peterson after differences of opinion because of that. And then seeing Jalen get this kind of deal, I actually really like what Howie is doing with that, because I did not think at the time this was the best idea. I did not. And seeing them being able to go compete for the Super Bowl, I knew that could happen because Jalen is tremendous talent, tremendous. But I didn't know if getting rid of Doug Peterson at the time was it. But they disagree with philosophy on what they wanted to do or how they wanted to go forward with him. If you want
like
to
we
speak
talked
to that,
about. Oh yeah, like we talked about before. Doug saw it, before
yeah,
everybody. Doug
right,
knew that Jalen was going to be this. And you've seen what he's done with Lawrence down there
right,
in Jacksonville. He is the quarterback whisperer. He sees talent, and like the reason why I wasn't off him like everyone else was, because I think everybody had the prisoner moment of him in college. The last time we really saw him on the big stage, he got benched for Tua in a
yeah,
national championship game. He went to Oklahoma. People really didn't follow him there. He had one of the greatest college quarterback seasons ever, but in any other year he would have won a Heisman. But then Joe Burrow, who we'll talk about later, also had 60 passing touchdowns that season. So nobody was going to outbeat him for the Heisman. But
got it.
I think Doug and even his teammates, because during the media runs that people have during the Super Bowl and everything else, the teammates talked about it too, who was on their team the year, during the pandemic season when Jalen got drafted. They saw it. They saw the work ethic. They saw, it's cliche that that they say it all the time, first guy in, last guy out. But that really is Jalen. Jalen is there before a lot of the coaches are. And, coaches get there at 4 or 5 in the morning. His car's parked outside the NovaCare complex already.
Yeah,
At
man.
9 o'clock at night, when everybody is long gone home, coaches are breaking down film, getting ready to install the game plan. They look up and like, Jalen, why are you still here? And he's just not getting down to workout and sitting down and talking to the coaches about what he likes and he's literally that guy, the work ethic, the after practice, even him being a backup, going over the game plan with the receivers as if he's the starter, that type of work ethic and wanting to get better. And even though it's been a slow progression, if you go look at his stats every year since he's been in the league from rookie year to last year, he's gotten better and better. And that's what you want to see in your quarterback. When you pay a quarterback or pay any player in the league, what us fans tend to forget is the GM is paying the player for what they think they're going to do, not what they have done. So we get outraged when they say, "Oh, we only had one good season. How is he getting this much money?" Howie is looking at it from a standpoint of this is his projection of how he progressed, and this is what we think he's going to be down the line. So we're going to pay him in that realm. And it's not to bash Carson Wentz even more because we pretty much know the story on that. But I'm not a big guy as far as like we got to see video in the off season of these guys working out because we know that they're working out. They're not going into the season, trash. They got to do some level of working out. But we didn't see Carson getting with guys and, flying them to Texas or flying them to California and working on, chemistry and rapport. Just like every quarterback has their favorite, receiver. That's you'll be lying if you say you didn't have a favorite tight end or receiver to throw the ball to. But Jalen also has rapport to where he knows, hey, if they take this one guy out the game, I got these other guys I can throw to. Whereas Wentz would be locked in on Ertz a lot because they were good friends, and he didn't really get the rapport.
It was more than just the fact that they were just friends. Ertz was a big target, and you couldn't miss him. That's one of the reasons I always thought he liked Ertz so much. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Exactly. But then you lose that rapport with Alshon Jeffrey. You lose that rapport with Torrey Smith and with Nelson Aguilar and Deshaun Jackson when he came along later on. And those guys had resentment for him. On top of the fact that people don't like to talk about it, because sometimes it can overshadow the actual talent on the field. Because if the talent's bad, people will highlight this more. But the intangibles do matter. The relationships do matter. Jalen, every time there's a new free agent or draftee, he takes them out to dinner and have a one-on-one dinner with them. And he's good with everybody in the locker room, and everybody roots for him. It's good to have a quarterback, as you know, with your quarterback, a team wanted to play for that guy, and people didn't want to play for Wentz. So, the reason why Jalen's not only getting this money is not because just Jalen the player, it's also Jalen the person, and Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman understanding that he's going to be a great ambassador, he's going to be a great face of the franchise, and they don't have to worry about, hopefully him not doing anything that will misrepresent the franchise as a whole.
I mean, that's one of the things you have to trust when you give somebody this kind of extension. But even though the extension is huge, okay, Jalen got paid. But even still, that's still the way they structured it, which we're starting to notice is a thing now. The way they're structuring these deals is giving the team flexibility. Now, with that being said, you still got to have the ownership to be able to do that. If you understand, you still got to have the ownership that has the liquid funds in an effort to put guaranteed money, because you have to put the guaranteed money, for those that don't know, in escrow. You have to put it in escrow, and then that gets paid over time depending upon how you structure it. But with that being said, I wonder if between Jalen and Mahomes are the two that I'm thinking about, because those are the two quarterbacks. Trying to think who else is. Rodgers getting paid 60 something, 50 something million. Jalen got more than him.
And then you got Russ just signed 49 a year.
Yeah, I forgot about
Kyler
Russ.
Murray 46 a year. He got the second most guaranteed 189 behind him.
Yeah.
So no guys work there.
But we see if we look at Russ's deal, if we look at Kyler Murray's deal, those two quarterbacks, they got their money, but it wasn't necessarily structured in a way that could make the team be as flexible as they would probably need to be / like to be. But
yes, a lot of these quarterbacks like that, exactly.
Yeah, and we look at Patrick Mahomes and Joe. I'm not saying Joe Burrow, and Jalen Hurts, and look at the deals, and those deals are structured in a way where the team can have a little bit of flexibility in an effort to put a better team around them. Let's speak on that a little bit. What do we think? Does this mean anything for the Joe Burrows of the world? Does this mean anything for the Herberts, for the Lawrences of the world, who are now coming up to get their extensions? And we're talking about, for these teams that we're discussing, like the Joe Burrows, the last quarterback they had was the Red Rifle, and I think he was back when they was still earning under $100 million as a contract.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we look at Justin Herbert, who their last quarterback was Phillip Rivers. You know, it's this is different money than that last generation.
Mm-hmm.
And then we look at, of course, Lamar and his situation. What does this mean? Does it affect them in any way? Will this be something that they're willing to do, is take a little bit of a discount in an effort to set themselves up, but ultimately set the team up for future success?
Okay, I'm going to attack all these guys one by one because I believe just what we talked about, how these different quarterback contracts are structured. I believe every quarterback has a different motivation about how they're going to attack this. We'll start with Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow, everybody theoretically, in theory, are already basically saying that he's going to break the bank. He's going to have a bigger contract than Jalen. In my mind, I believe that Joe Burrow is going to be of the same school as Mahomes and Jalen because I think Joe Burrow is very, very, very self-aware of the situation that he's in. Joe Burrow, just like Jalen and just like Patrick Mahomes, is a very, very marketable player. Joe Burrow can make money outside of football. Like he has the good looks, just like Jalen, just like Patrick Mahomes, the charisma, the fanfare. So he can make money out of this. I think Joe Burrow wants to be in the level of competition with the Allens, with the Mahomes of the world, and he knows that in a franchise where he's in, and I've talked about this on this podcast and other platforms. Like he knows that his owner is cheap. I don't
know if it's so much cheap as him.
He's cheap.
I mean,
it's how you. That's why I never fully blame Marvin Lewis for those shortcomings in the playoffs, because I can get this guy I can get Pac-Man Jones, I can get Vontaze Burfict for a discount, and they can go scramble guys' brains and get arrested, and I don't got to pay them anything. Sign me up for that.
The only ones he really paid was, I'm trying to think of the lineman's name. I really liked him, defensive tackle.
Geno Atkins.
Geno Atkins, really.
Yeah, like when the last time has Mike Brown broke the bank on anybody? He just last year, the Bengals just built that indoor practice facility. Just last year. Them guys had to practice in the rain and the cold and the snow up there in Cincinnati. They used to, in the late 90s, mid 2000s, they used to share equipment. Think about that for a second. Staph infection and everything going on. You sharing equipment. The average NFL personnel department has 20 to 25 members in their personnel. You can look this up. You can fact check this. The Bengals have 8. That's including the scouts and personnel guys. He's cheap. So I think the Burrow
scored bad in that in the little
the players union grade of teams. Absolutely. I think Joe Burrow knows that he notoriously has a cheap owner. We no discredit to Joe Burrow, because I hate the whole, because they do it with Jalen all the time. I hate the whole, this guy got X amount of talent around him, so he's not a good quarterback because he got this talent. And to those people credit, we've never seen Joe Burrow without 2 elite receivers. In college, he had Jamar Chase, he had Justin Jefferson, he had Terrence Marshall, who are all 3 in the NFL, and then he had Moss's kid at tight end, Thaddeus Moss, and I know he reigns lower and Lothan your fan base, but he had Clyde at running back when he was really good in college.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, so and then now he gets to the NFL. He has Jamar, he has T. Higgins, he has Tyler Boyd. Unrealistically, they're not going to be able to pay all three. But if you can pay Higgins after this year, if this is his last year of his contract, and pay Chase down the road, I think Joe Burrow understands and has the self-awareness that he wants to get those guys paid and have them guys around him versus it's like, when you want to be a guy that be a, like you said, a benchmark guy and set the tone for the quarterback market and break the bank and get $300 million deal with a whole lot of extra guarantees? Or do you want to be a guy that signs a deal that looks really good, that's full of signing bonuses, roster bonuses, workout bonuses, and that thing? I think he would take the latter rather than the former.
Let's unpack this a little bit. I had some other stuff to talk about, but this is probably gonna take most of the show. Looking at the Cincinnati Bengals ownership, we allow ownership to cry poor way too much.
Exactly.
Let's be real. We allow the ownership to cry poor way too much. Yeah, the cap is the cap, and you can't go over. This is not baseball. You can't just go over the cap whenever you want, pay that luxury tax, and keep it moving. You can't do that like the NBA does. But like you said, the ownership in Cincinnati is cheap.
My God. Mike Brown's father's name was on that stadium since he took over for the last 30 years. They just got a naming rights to the stadium last year, Paycor Stadium. It used to be Paul Brown Stadium. He used to get any money. That guy is extremely cheap, extremely cheap. And I have this conversation all the time, and I'll let it get back to you. But we have to stop. We have to, as fans, we have to start recognizing that in sports, some owners want to win and some owners want to make money. I have this conversation all the time, and people have to start recognizing that. Some owners cry poor because they want to make money. They got this product because they care about their bottom line, i.e., that guy down there in Texas with the big star on the side of the helmet, i.e., some of these historically broke franchises. Like, I say this all the time, and I let it, get back to you. I'm far away from a fair weather fan. I talk about it all the time. I've been an Eagles fan since I was 4 years old. I went through Rich Kutchik area. I went through Ray Rose. I went through, obviously, Andy Reid, the disaster, which was Chip Kelly, Doug Peterson, and now, Nick Sirianni. But and you can call me a quitter. I don't care. There's no way I could cheer for fan bases or for an organization like the Lions or the Falcons or the Jets. And they're a great fan base, don't get me wrong. But if my team has only won one playoff game in 50 years like the Lions, or the Jets won one Super Bowl and it was 1969 and they've gone, 13 years without a playoff appearance, or the Falcons, who you just never know if they're going to win a game or not. You can't even sit your popcorn down because they'll be up double digits with 10 minutes left in the game, and then next thing you know, they lost. Like, stuff like that. Like, then that's admirable to be, but those organizations don't actively try to win football games. Like, the Lions are starting to get back around now, and the Jets are, they can get Aaron Rodgers possibly, but historically, some type of franchises, those ownership groups. I'm going to wrap it up. I use Daniel Snyder as another example who's about to sell his team. Since he took up that organization, even though they're in our division, I don't hate them as much as I hate the Cowboys and the Giants. But that organization used to be one of the frontier organizations in football. They sold out all the time. We affectionately call DC Chocolate City because they have so many black people in that area, and they would sell that place out all the time. How can you effectively buy a organization and run off all the fans to where you have the lowest attendance in the league? You have the most dysfunctional organization.
Yes.
Exactly. As far as front office, the stadium is a mess. Like, If you ever get a chance to go to FedEx Field, I'm telling you, man, it's the worst stadium I've ever been to. The worst stadium ever. There's literally pipe busting and feces falling from the pipes on the people's heads, bro. Like, what are we doing here? The seats are messed up. The field is a disaster. Your players could get injured on that field. So that lets you know that if you're not upkeeping just the basic stuff and putting a park on the field for the fans to even want to come, these owners don't care about winning. And if you're a fan, you're gonna be a fan of these organizations, you got to hold these ownerships accountable. Or if not, you're gonna be in purgatory forever.
Agreed. And myself, I came to that realization a little while ago that everybody that's in it ain't in it to win it.
Exactly.
And I would even say the Chiefs were in that mode at one point where we were just existing, like especially the late 90s, early 2000s. We were just here to, I mean, they might have been trying to win, but it just wasn't working. Ended up having to fire general manager Carl Peterson, who actually resurged the fan base back in the 90s. And then, but what told me that they wanted to really get this thing on the right track was going out to get Andy Reid. So I don't know. I think they might have been wanting to win and just not knowing how to do it. But for a long time, I wasn't sure that they was actually literally trying to win. And I don't think a lot of teams are. Like, I'm starting to feel like the Jags actually started trying in the last 5 years. Seattle started trying once they drafted Russell Wilson and got Pete Carroll. Like, there's a bunch of them that are just collecting a paycheck and collecting this stuff from these fans and not even putting the winning product out there on the field. And I do believe that much.
I was going to say this, and we can transition this into his contract situation. I give Arthur Blank a lot of credit because Arthur Blank, I live in this area. When he took over this team, the Falcons, he was one of the people who leaned into the Black experience of Atlanta. Like, he recognized that, hey, this city is however many percent Black people. I'm going to lean into that. You go to a Falcons game, even though the product on the field ain't always the best, you're going to have the best time of your life, man. They got the DJ, they got DJ Tigger out there on the big Tigger on the spins. They got the music, they got the dancers. The food is extremely cheap, like some of the cheapest stadium food I've ever had. Like, you could get a hot dog, nachos, pizza, and a soda for $10. Like, it's cheap, and he's actually leaning into the Black experiences where, like, the Braves didn't like that many Black people in their stadium, so they moved from Turner Field downtown to Cobb County, and things of that nature. But it makes you wonder if he really wants to win, because he's like, we don't need Lamar Jackson. What are you talking about? As Black as this city is, and you had Michael Vick, like, Vick had you on a doorstep to a Super Bowl, and Lamar Jackson would instantly be better than any quarterback you've ever had in your franchise's history. Not only the fanfare and everything is after you tried to throw money at the nasty man just a year prior. But you're saying we don't want to go after Lamar Jackson. We don't want to piss Desmond Ridder off. I'm sorry, who is Desmond Ridder?
Nobody.
Exactly. So like whether the owners are colluding or whether they don't believe in Lamar Jackson is, it's another discussion for another day. But
man, I know a lot of former GMs went down there and ended up becoming like some sort of something in the organization. What's his face? They used to be the GM up Ryan Pace up with the Bears. I never liked Dimitrov, but and he's gone. But I know the former GM here, Pioli was down there for a little bit. Like, I know some of them down there are colluding again. I don't want to say colluding, but they don't want Lamar to be down there. But like you said, I think that's probably the best place for Lamar to be is down there. And they don't
it's basically like Baltimore, it's two sides of a different coin because Baltimore has an entrenched black fan base there, and
Absolutely.
it's a perfect fit. I mean, outside of the Ravens, those two are the perfect fit for him, style wise, playbook wise, organization wise, culture wise, everything wise. Um, and we can go into this. I think Lamar should. I don't think Lamar is going to get more than Jalen Hurts.
I don't
Um,
think so
I
either.
think
Never
they put a
thought.
deal on. If the reports are true, like Adam Schefter said, they gave him a deal similar to Hurts with more guaranteed at signing 133, and it was going to be about the third year him getting up to 175 million guaranteed, which would have been less than Hurts and less than Kyler Murray. Um, and basically, them last 2 years of the deal, basically injury guarantees to get out of it in case and he felt disrespected by that. And
That's what the disrespect at the end of it, like just making sure that they had their outs. That was where I felt that he was disrespected. Where I
yeah,
felt he thought he was disrespected.
and that's the reason why I've been a proponent of him having an agent. I don't like being
Absolutely.
pro business. I hate, I'm always pro player because I believe these players should get as much money as they possibly can. These
They ain't no
billionaires make
different.
money. Yeah, exactly. They make money hand over fist from this product and from the things that made them billionaires in the first place. So these players sign these big deals. They get to take care of their kids, kids, and their kids as well. So I'm pro player in this, but I use his quote from Bomani Jones that somebody I avidly listen to. He has an agent because the agent not going to 9 times out of 10 not going to tell you that first or second offer that you get because you don't want to cuss your boss out because the boss disrespecting you. You want to have a good relationship with your bosses, and they probably gave him a couple offers that he took personal. Well, if you have that agent, you don't have to worry about the dynamics of it getting personal in that. And like I was saying earlier with Jalen, and I knew it was going to transition to this. If I feel like if Lamar had an agent, he would have signed a deal 2 years ago. Right after that
Absolutely.
fourth season, right before the fifth year option kicked in, because he was a first round draft pick, the agent would have told him, "You're not stepping on the field without a deal." That was around the time of the Mahomes deal. That was around the time of the Allen deal. That was around the time of the Prescott deal. You could
It
have
was.
gotten Lamar then. That's why I blame both the Ravens and Lamar because I felt like the Ravens then tried to sign him at that point. They was willing to ride it out the fifth year option, and I blame Lamar for not having an agent for not signing at that time as well.
Here's what I thought about that. Um, they saw opportunity and they planned on taking it. They were going to throw whatever deal that they could just because he doesn't have an agent. He doesn't have an agent, so we're just going to throw whatever we can at him and hope he takes it. If he does take it, we're good. If he doesn't, we have this secondary deal that we could do that still leans towards us organizationally as opposed to leans towards him.
Mhm.
And he saw it, he recognized it. But the issue is, here's where the issue is. It's not about recognizing it. That's number one. Yeah, you recognize that this isn't a good deal. That's great. But what are you going to do about it? He hasn't done anything about it. He hasn't been able to talk to anybody about it. And the narrative has not been in his favor in the media. And yeah, maybe you don't care about that. But at the end of the day, you do have to cater to fans in some way. Okay. They will it's like the Dark Knight, like what they say in the Dark Knight. You either die a
Oh yeah,
hero or you live
real
to
low never
yourself.
come to villain. Yeah.
And when it comes to money, money will villainize you quicker than anything that you could think about. Friendships have lifelong friendships have broken over money. Um, like you can't
Relationship.
relationships, like just the things that you thought were concrete have broken over money. And you got to think about that when you're moving forward. And I understand you not wanting to get a deal. I was rooting for Lamar with this whole thing, but I also see that they might be trying to make an example out of him to tell these kids to get a deal, because this wasn't Richard Sherman. Richard Sherman did his own deal, but those were
And I was just about to say that too. Guys like Richard Sherman, like Russell Okung, like Bobby Wagner, like even you see Thompson having success with these little short deals. He keep getting back to the apple, getting a bite off the apple. But them guys made sure they got their first big deal done first and got respected. Then they decided to go on their own. Lamar's what he's doing is admirable. Is uncharted waters for a guy to do that. But they don't like you said before, they don't respect it. And my whole thing about it is that it's uncharted waters for both of them, because there's only been 3 quarterbacks in the National Football League since the franchise tag been in existence that's played on the tag. That's Drew Brees in 2005 when they drafted his replacement. He ended up being good, and I was like, well, wait, we don't want to move on from him yet. Let's franchise tag him. He ultimately gets injured, with the elbow injury. They move on to Phillip Rivers, and then he goes to the Saints. But he played on the franchise deal. Kirk Cousins played on it twice because Washington knew that he wasn't their long-term future. But at the same time, what else are we going to do? Who else are we going to get? And then obviously Dak Prescott. And Prescott was the only one that signed a long-term deal out of the 3. Because like I said, the other 2 went to other teams. Breeze went to the Saints. Kirk Cousins went to the Vikings, and Prescott got a deal where if the Cowboys would have been smart and signed him early, they could have got him in the low 30s. Instead, they had to pay him $40 a year, 4 years, $160 million, with 126 of that guaranteed, which is bananas. And they can't get out of that deal until his last year. So it lets you know how unprecedented this is, because most teams take care of their quarterback before they even get to that point of franchising them. But it lets you know that we are in a unique situation with him not having an agent, and also the Ravens thinking they can kind of get over on him and on everything like that. So I don't think he's going to get that much money because of the breakdowns of how guys like Herbert, and then like we talked about earlier, Joe Burrow probably signing a deal similar to Hurts. They're going to be like, hey, these guys went to the Super Bowl, even though you have an MVP, you haven't. So this is a good enough deal for you. And the Ravens haven't been the best at putting receivers around him. They're going to make them plead like, hey, we can use this extra money to put guys over you, even though the Ravens usually get guys that are past their prime. Like they just got Odell. They're in the market for Hopkins as well, who is north of 30 also. And then, you look at their statistics, their all-time leading receiver is Derrick Mason. Like, I like Derrick Mason. I liked him as a player, but he's Derrick Mason. Like, he's not they had Anquan Bolden for a cup of coffee. They had Steve Smith Jr., but their model is usually play defense, have a good running game, and have a pretty good top 5 tight end. They had Todd Heap. They had Dennis Pitta. They got Mark Andrews now. In their 27-year history, that's been their model. And it's won them 2 Super Bowls, but this is a new league. This is a new day. You gotta score points.
Which they can still roll with it. They just got to find better receivers, which I think that they're going to try to do. But if they had got Lamar to sign that deal, they probably would have done those things. But I don't think that that's going to happen now. I really don't.
And then I'm gonna get to Herbert real fast. I think Herbert's gonna be the one that's gonna get more than all of them, because Herbert is the team. I think Herbert and his agent gonna have the mindset of, we don't trust because usually when you get a guy a large contract, he's gonna get a large sum of the cap, 25-30% of the cap. That then leads the GM to have to be able to draft well. We can use the Chiefs as an example. Even though Mahomes' deal is friendly, the Chiefs have done a great job of drafting corners in the late 6th, 7th round. That was a tremendous part of the Super Bowl last year. Being able to recognize that they need linemen and doing well in free agency, drafting Creed Humphrey, drafting guys on the line, and understand, hey, we can't overpay for this left tackle. Let's get another guy in here that we can get at a bargain. The Chargers historically aren't very good at recognizing receiver talent. On top of the fact you have an aging Keenan Allen, You have Mike Williams, who's still young and is game breaking, but he has an injury history. Outside of that, we can't really think of, outside of them drafting LT and Antonio Gates falling in their lap. If you want to go back in the day to, like, the old days with like Kellen Winslow and that early opening up air raid offense that they had with Dan Fouts and that type of thing. But historically, they haven't been a team that can draft very well. So Herbert's probably looking at the fact that they have a poor training staff, they're a poor organization, scouting talent. Give me my money and let me just run this thing. Let me get as much as I can get. I think he's going to be the one. And I think the Chargers want respect in that division with y'all. What they see what Mahomes is getting, they see what Wilson is getting, and they're going to try to break the bank. I think he's going to get the most out of everyone.
Yeah, it's a bad idea for them, but hey,
like we said, in theory, it is a bad idea, but in application, we know what we're dealing with here when it comes to the Chargers. We've seen this movie with them before, and they haven't shown any reason to change. They're doing this solely based off of this young man's talent, which he has a lot of talent, but he hasn't gotten out. He just made the playoffs last year. Like, Jalen is the first quarterback out of the 2020 draft to sign. Burrow hasn't signed Herbert, and the jury's still out on Tua.
We're still, we got a little bit of time left. Let's talk about that. If we look at it, the decision that they made to move on from Dougie P to Doug Peterson, for those that don't know, to Nick Sirianni was a correct decision in hindsight. Now, with that being said, we look at Joe Burrow, of the Joe Burrows of the world. I didn't know if Zach Taylor. I always forget his name. I don't know why. I didn't know if
very forgettable coach.
I didn't know if Zach Taylor was the guy, but he's still, they got enough talent there to mask all his inabilities to coach, in my opinion. I know that he's not a horrible coach, don't get me wrong, but he's not the best. But we look at Staley down there in LA, when they could have, when I tell you they could have had Doug Peterson, when I tell you, had they did had they done the inevitable already, I mean inevitable in firing him at the time, the world was their oyster. They could have even had Byron Leftwich, which I do think that having a rookie coach is going to be a bad thing, but even still, they will probably end up firing this dude this year or next, depending on what they go. But I still think that their brand, they still have the same brand. Like, they need to figure out how to reorganize the situation. Paying Herbert ain't gonna change nothing. Herbert is not gonna change nothing. It locks up your quarterback, but like you said, I do think Herbert's gonna be more of like a situation where, hey, I need to get mine because I know y'all.
Exactly.
So,
and the same, I think ultimately, I mean, he's 2 years out now, because I think this will be his third season. So next year is more likely when they'll do. I think the same thing for Lawrence. I think Lawrence is going to be one of those type of guys where he got an ego to himself, to where he's going to want to be the highest paid guy as well. He might wise up and take a contract, but his talent around him is kind of like mid-tier, like veteran-ish. He don't have a lot of young guys around him. Like, they just got really is 28, 29 years old.
He's no spring chicken now.
Yeah, they got rid of Marvin Jones. And they got a couple of young guys there. They still got ETN, but most of their talent, youth-wise, is on the defensive side of the football. So he might be a type of guy that looks to break the bank also and get a little bit more than Hurts on a fairly structured deal. But them type of organizations, you just don't trust them to make deals like what the Eagles and what the Chiefs and what ultimately, even though I don't trust the Bengals, I think Joe Burrow just got the self-awareness to take that deal. But them organizations are not very good. Like keep in mind, like the Chargers, the Jaguars rather are in the same boat that the Ravens are in. They haven't been in existence long. You can look over their history. They're not good at this type of stuff. They're just not. They had a chance, and I never. And hindsight could be 2020, but I'll never forgive the Jaguars in 2017 having that championship level team having a chance to go to the Super Bowl. And it's like, no, let's roll with Blake Bortles. And they got to the AFC Championship game, but then they handicapped him in the second half because they didn't want to lose again because they knew that he wasn't good enough. And you had a quarterback in Colin Kaepernick who was a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Super Bowl participant in the Super Bowl who went to two NFC Championship games back to back. He went to the NFC Championship game the next year, right there, who had just got cut from the 49ers. And I know what the politics were and how Tom Coughlin felt about that. He was like, nah, let's double down and re-sign Blake Bortles. And it ultimately crippled their franchise.
Yeah,
They just got back to the playoffs for the first time since 2017, losing guys like Jalen Ramsey, losing Bouye, losing some of those Calais Campbell, some of those stalwarts that they had because they didn't know how to run an organization. They could have drafted Lamar in that 2018 draft, but they decided to go with Blake Bortles. So I think Lawrence got that awareness. Trent Baalke doesn't have the best track record as a GM in this league. So I wouldn't be surprised if, for the same reason that Lawrence is like, hey, man, give me my money. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if him and Herbert be the ones that set the market for the next quarterbacks going into it. And to bring this back home to Lamar, notice that the 2020 draft guys are getting paid now. When was Lamar drafted? 2018. The fact that he doesn't have a deal and these guys are up for one is still asinine to me.
I mean, it has. When we talk about that, it has a lot to do with both sides of the coin on that one. Both sides of the coin are to blame, the organization as well as the player himself. For me, I used to like, let's put it like this, the GM for the Ravens, because when he started off, DaCosta, thank you. He got put in a situation where he was, he got put in a favorable situation. They had just drafted Lamar, and then the former tight end that used to be the GM, name escapes me.
Ozzie
Newsome, thank you. He had stepped down, but he left them with his franchise quarterback, which was dope. That's something he didn't have to worry about anymore. Because if we look at it, with the Indianapolis Colts, he's scared to draft a quarterback.
Chris Ballard.
Chris Ballard's scared to draft a quarterback. It's one of his scariest
Might
things.
not have a choice this year.
He went there just so he didn't have to draft a quarterback. And
unless he's gonna roll with Gardner Minshew this year.
Oh God, no. I mean, I like Gardner, but he's not the guy.
He's not a franchise quarterback.
Yeah, he can be.
You're not rolling with the stash. You're not rolling with the mullet. You're not.
He could do it, but in the AFC South, that AFC South is ready for the taking.
Brandon, Mississippi, stand up. Brandon, Mississippi's own Gardner
Mississippi. Woo, boy, the Mississippi connection. Them roots run deep, but
run deep, man.
You got to realize, man, this is both. This is on the fault of both parties, in my opinion. The Ravens and Lamar Jackson have a bit of blame in this. But man, that's pretty much all I need to talk about. We had a bunch of other things to talk about.
I want to hit on them two topics real quick, and I'm not going to be long. I think the Allen Robinson trade to the Steelers is a good move for both parties involved. The Rams are rebuilding. I hate it for Allen Robinson though, because he's never had a good quarterback ever. He
was never in the right scheme down there.
No,
anyway.
Blake Bortles, he
wasn't going to be.
Exactly. He's went with Blake Bortles. He's went with Trubisky, Josh McCown. The best quarterback he had was Stafford, and Stafford was hurt. He just didn't fit in that scheme. He's a possession guy, and they wanted him to be more of a vertical threat, which is.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I think it suits him well in the Steelers. He can be that possession guy along with Pickens, and you can move Deontay Johnson to slot, so it makes him a little bit more versatile. Even though I don't particularly like their offensive coordinator.
I don't
But I think it suits him better. And I think Bryce Young canceling out his visits is smart because I think Bryce Young knows that he's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. I don't think you make him.
Those were our other 2 subjects, right? Those were our other 2 subjects.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think.
Let me just throw this out there on Bryce Young. Teams throw smoke all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Teams throw smoke all the time. They say we will draft you, and they don't. So I don't know.
I think he's going to fall to the Texans though, because I think the Texans. I think it'll be stupid if they don't take a quarterback, whether it's Young or Stroud. Yeah. But I think that they are in love with Bryce Young, and they have been under the impression this whole time that the Panthers are going to take Stroud number 1, or potentially, pull a shocker and draft Richardson number 1, and Young's going to fall in their lap. But because it seemed like the rumblings are Young's going number 1, the Texans are more willing now to trade out of that and maybe take a Richardson as a project, or take a Will Levis or something like that, because they love Young.
Not Will Levis. Not Will Levis. Not Will Levis. Don't do
it.
Don't do it.
Young's only flaw is going to be his size. His height is no problem, because we've seen quarterbacks like Kyler Murray, Russ, below 6 feet guys succeed in the league. It's being a sub 200-pound quarterback is going to be his issue. But everything, he checks all the boxes. He has the pocket presence. He has the accuracy. He has the ball placement. He's the most pro-ready quarterback in this draft. It's all about his, him being able to navigate his size. And he played in the SEC where he took a lot of big hits. He played with a lot of bigger guys. So, obviously the NFL, they're much stronger, faster. But the SEC is close to the NFL as you're going to get. So he's pro-ready. But I think that the reason why he canceled those, like you said, it could be smoke and it could change. But I think it's safe to say he's going to the Panthers number 1, where he has a great coaching staff. Frank Reich is a great quarterback whisperer. He has a great staff there, and a sleeper that nobody's talking about. I thought it was a great move, great hire by them. Them hiring Jim Caldwell as an offensive assistant. You saw Peyton Manning gives him so much credit for it, because Peyton Manning was a lost cause before Caldwell got there. He was still talented as all get out, but he led the league in interceptions a lot before Caldwell got there. Caldwell helped his footwork, helped him see the game.
We don't talk about that enough.
Exactly. Really he had an opportunity to have an undefeated season his first year as coach, but they decided to set guys the last 2 games, and they got to the Super Bowl and ultimately lost. But, and let's talk about the month and a half that he was the offensive coordinator of the Ravens. When they fired Cam Cameron, he took over and took them to a Super Bowl. Flacco had the hottest month that we've ever seen. And then after that, he went back down to earth, got him paid. And then you saw the job he did with the Lions, and I always be mad about that. 10-6 ain't enough.
I really don't like the Lions for
that. Your organization saying that been losing their whole existence, say, well, we want a better coach because 10-6 ain't enough. And we go 10-6 all the time. And they ain't been 10-6 since. Exactly. Like, come on, man. But I think he lands in a great situation. They're putting a lot of good guys around him. Them getting Miles Sanders, who, former running back from us. Deuce Staley, who is a great running back coach and assistant head coach as well. I think he's in a great position with an owner that wants to win. Like we was talking, what we were talking about earlier. He wants to spend the money. He wants to win. So I think it's a great situation for Bryce Young to fall into.
Absolutely, man. But I appreciate you being on with me, man. Again, this is the season premiere of the show. And so I'm glad to have you.
I feel special. Let's go.
Yeah, man. So we gonna do it again. We got all summer, and summer has its lows, it has its highs, it has its lows, and I fully expect there to be some big signings this summer. Burrows, the other quarterback down in Los Angeles, but Herbert, thank you. We'll have some other stuff to talk about, plenty of other stuff. So I thank you for showing up and doing this with me. I know you're getting off work, so I appreciate you, man. And I thank you everybody for listening. I'm gonna do this every week as much as I can, and we gonna get it going. So anything else you want to say? Any last words?
All I gotta say is I appreciate you, man, for having me on. I can't wait to get back on here. And when Joe Burrow signs, make sure you be on the lookout in the group chat for LSU player.
No, thank you. Don't do that. All right, that's all we got. Deuces.